creators. I mean, obviously it would be great to have an album out in that time, but I mean, I think by the time Darkness came out, the impact of punk it hadn't diminished. I mean, the repercussions were still there, but like the sort of the frontal assault had passed on, and I think that Darkness was sort of, you know, could reconcile itself. The attitudes and the themes on the album could reconcile themselves to like what punk had changed. You know, it was an album in keeping with the times. Whereas something like Born to Run was exactly the sort of thing that the whole punk thing was against. You know, that it was that romanticism. You know, there's like recently there's been accusations that he's the sexist. You know, and
it's interesting though that some people seem to put Springsteen into the punk or new wave category at the time. You know, he was the sort of the street punk. You know, with leather jackets and all this, the street talk. And yet, like you say, it was everything, represented everything of the old guard, which they were against.
So I never ever thought of him as a sort of, as, you know, a punk. You know, I mean,
obviously the media image was the new Dylan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which I think lasted for a long time. But I mean, anybody, you know, who had a guitar and sort of, you know, wrote their own songs was the new Dylan. You know.
Yeah, he's not the only one.
There's a long list of new Dylans.
He's done his best to sort of outlive that. Outlive the new Presley, the new Guthrie, the new you name it.
Oh yeah, I know he's done it very well. I mean, but yeah, you know, the only annoying thing is what we were saying earlier on about that. You know, he just does take so long to do it. I mean,
yeah, that's the most maddening thing. Certainly.
And he's, you know, I've never really seen him as a figurehead. I mean, apart from being, you know, a consummate rock and roll craftsman. I mean, I've never really seen him as a figurehead. You know, I don't sort of live by his lyrics as I did with Dylan. I mean, mind you, I was a lot younger. I'm like when you're sort of 14 or something, and you know, somebody says don't follow leaders. You know, I mean, you think, well, you know, fucking right. You know, I think Dylan, because I mean, the '60s were the decade of change. You know, that was very much so. Like the mid '70s was, you know, there was like the economic recession. There was sort of a feeling that the rock heroes you followed had betrayed you. I mean, the Beatles were broken up. I mean, Dylan was in seclusion. The Stones were sort of in tax exile. The Floyd were, you know, doing all their sort of you know, building up to the wall. You know, I mean,
everything was at low ebb, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You're going back to sort of fanzines and bootlegs, and the sort of collectible side of things, really. I've often wondered what Bruce would, you know, how Bruce feels about these things, not only as his own artist, but also as a fan.
Yeah.
You know, you wonder whether he would collect such things himself, and whether he would approve, you know.
Well, there's all the classic quotes, like, you know, roll your tapes and, you know, sort of magic of bootlegs and all that. I mean, he's obviously aware of it. I think as a fan he'd understand it, but I think as you say, I mean, I think the single-mindedness he'd find baffling. You know, that there were people who just lived for his sort of next sermon from the mount. You know.
Yes, I think he still finds that hard to believe that people can relate to him the way he related to Elvis.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting point, isn't it? You know, I mean, at one point I make in the book was that when he was talking about trying to visit Elvis in '75, no, it was '77. He tried to break into Graceland. You know, and a lot of people there wanted to get that close to him. You know, I mean, he was the Elvis of that generation, if you like. So I mean, that's you know, I think he does find it difficult, but he's become this sort of this figurehead. You know, I wonder. I mean, there's quite a revealing Paul Simon quote about '68 where he said, they said, you know, you've been called a poet, and he said, well, you know, I don't think I am a rock poet. I mean, I just think that everything else is so bad. The stuff I do stands out because it is actually quite good. And I think in a way with Springsteen, you know, it's sort of because he was doing stuff at the time that was sort of unfashionable, which is like really caring and sweating about your music and really giving good value for money and really kicking out sort of, you know, I mean, it's, again, you know, it's an interesting sort of thing. I mean, you get like New Order, who are like, revered as I suppose of this generation's Pink Floyd, you know, I mean, as musicians, as what they have to say. I mean, they only play 40-minute sets because they feel that what they have to say can best be said in 40 minutes, and they don't do encores, you know. Now, I mean...
Sounds like Chuck Berry, yes.
Yeah, right, you know, I mean, you know, as a punter, I resent that. I mean, as a critic, I suppose they've got a point, you know. I mean, what, you know, you can overdo it, you know. And I've been to a number of gigs where you think, well, you know, great, but, you know, frankly, could have lost half an hour out of that and would have been a lot better shows, I think. So, I mean, again, with Springsteen, you've got, like, I mean, and again, you get into another area where it's become like a real millstone around his neck, you know, but he sort of feels that he's got to play, certainly, 3 hours, you know, anything less than 3 hours, and people like to live the value for money. That's 3 hours.
Sure.
You know, by anybody else's standards, it's really daunting. I couldn't imagine anybody doing that, you know.
Yes, he's got a lot to live up to, and yet after the tour, some friends and myself found that anything less was disappointing.
Yeah.
Like you say, and you can't really realistically expect that.
No, but I mean, I think he has just got. I think he does live for that performance and for working in the studio, because I mean, like, soon as the River Tour finished, which is like a really comprehensive tour. You know, you look at the dates, and he was working his balls off, you know, for the best part of a year, 18 months or whatever. And I mean, you know, he had about a month off, and then, you know, anybody who had to go through Asbury Park, he was like they're jamming with him. You know, I think he really does.
That shows, yes, the way he was playing almost every weekend in '82.
Yeah, which was, you know, considering the sort of the extent of the tour, which would have knackered most people. You know, he just seems to. I mean, it's not the sort of. It doesn't seem to be like the love of the spotlight. You know, it's not the sort of Judy Garland. You know.
Well, there's a bit of that, isn't there?
I think there's a bit, but I think he just genuinely.
He hands it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he really is a hat. You know, you see that, like.
I heard he'd taken up being a stand-up comedian recently in one of the clubs on the shore, and apparently his jokes were so terrible he got booed off after 10 minutes. And yet it works on context, you know, the context of on stage.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
in the band introductions, for example.
Oh yeah.
Always a high point.
Oh sure. Well, he's very talented, very talented performer, and is in control of the whole thing, which is great, you know, because, you know, I mean, I genuinely think after you've seen him live, you know, there really isn't anybody else. I mean, you know, you've seen that, and you've reached like the very apogee of the craft. And I mean, you know, you stop it there, and then you go on from there. I mean, one of the best shows I saw last year was probably the best show was Waylon Jennings, who I think is like, you know, a similarly sort of legendary figure. And I mean, it was a brilliant show. You know, about 90 minutes, 2 hours of just brilliantly done music, but it's completely different to Springsteen, you know. And I think Springsteen just took rock gigs, rock performances to its zenith, you know. And I don't think that anybody could ever touch that. You know.
I think people have been influenced by that. I mean, I read a good article, I think it was from Billboard, about how the River Tour was seen as like a model tour in terms of standards that it's set.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think that has influenced people.
Yes,
more.
I think that, yes.
Sound quality is getting better, shows are getting longer. Take Warren Zevon, for example.
That's right, yeah.
But like you say, no one can really match that.
No, because I think with the Springsteen show, I mean, what I found, which I suppose is one reason, because you saw the River Tour, the reason that it seems such a good album, is that, you know, you had in that 4-hour show or whatever, you just had everything from like just the sheer exaltation of rock and roll and just of being alive, you know, like when they just did like 4 straightforward rockers, you know, particularly when they came out like second half, you know, and it just bang, 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 you know. And I mean, you just up there, you know, and it was just great to be alive, you know. And then they could do like sort of Racing in the Streets and Wreck on the Highway and like the really thought-provoking stuff, you know, and you know, you calm down and be really sort of attentive. And I mean, the intensity was there. I mean, that's the thing, that it wasn't, you know, it never slipped for a minute, you know, like whether it was like a real out-and-out rocker or a really sort of thought-provoking ballad, you know, the intensity and the commitment to the music were there. You know? And I mean, that is unique. You know?
He's even got control of the audience.
Yeah.
Talking of having control of everything, because he knows how to pace the set.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Oh, it's very, objectively. I was just saying, earlier on, I mean, even if you like the guy, I think respect his
You've got to admit he puts on a good show.
Puts on a hell of a show.
That's right. I mean, yes, it's interesting because apparently there's no set order any night. I believe he just knows what he's going to start with and finish with. And anything in between is anybody's guess.
That's right. Yeah.
They never have any.
Well, I think you get that. I mean, I think there are certain bands that can do that. I mean, it is down to sort of paying your dues, man. I think that. With the E Street Band, I mean, what the present line, they've been together for best part of 10 years, and the sort of core of the band has been together for a lot longer. And I think that there's just an intuition, there's just an understanding and empathy in that band that you can't really get. I mean, like, I remember I saw the band in 1970 at the Albert Hall, and like the thing that really impressed me was like they came out on stage and just went 1, 2, 3, 4, and went straight into the first song. And this was like in the days when like you get like 10 minutes tuning up and what are we,
Grateful Dead.
Yeah, right. It was a fucking mess, And these guys came out and they swapped instruments, and just and you got the feeling that you could have, like the human jukebox, you could have called it anything and they'd have done it, and they'd have done it perfectly. And I think the same with Costello and the Attractions. I think there's just that empathy there, because like I've seen Costello quite a lot over the past couple of years, like ranging from like the Hammersmith Palais to the Albert Hall with the orchestra.
He's changed a lot.
Yeah. And again, there's just that he can go from like sort of really like Clown Time Is Over, and it's like so fucking intense, and just go wham straight into something else. And like he can just pick on, he can do Philly soul, he can do country, he can do rock and roll, soul, ballads, and 2-hour show, and just one after the other, just knocks them off.
Did you see the last show?
There is somebody who is regarded as like the sort of the master of American rock and roll, can come out with something as sort of audacious as Nebraska,
right.
given the climate, it's
after spending months in the studio producing The River.
Yeah, right. And he can just
bashing out Nebraska.
That's right. Yeah, the folk revival style thing.
It'd be interesting actually if he's picked up some new fans from folk scene or blues or whatever.
Yeah.
A different sort of area. And what they'll think of the next.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, it is interesting because it was like a complete, real shock. To do that because a lot of people always thought of him as a sort of as a folk character, whereas in fact his actual folk roots are really minimal. He's never, really said like the new Dylan, but his Springsteen's sort of background was the radio and pop music, British beat groups and
50s
soul,
and 60s,
yes. And folk really played a minimal part.
Only recently he's been picking up on people like Woody Guthrie.
Yeah, Mike Williams and those chaps. Yeah. No, as well. The next step, as a tantalising unknown.
Do you sort of make guesses about the future in the book, or?
No, not really. No, I think it's fraught with peril.
It certainly is.
Yeah, I think it'll be a rock and roll album, with the E Street Band, and I think it'll be,
by all accounts,
it'll be very, very good. But
just when? That's
when. It's dragged on too long. He's got to. I think he needs somebody to. Well, Nick loading a clip around the ear and spelling the army, sort of get him back in track. So I think it's like with McCartney. McCartney went through years of doing really daft stuff. And when he got back together with George Martin for Tug of War, I think what happened was that Martin really did become like sort of schoolmaster to his pupil, and he said, well, look, this isn't good enough, go back and rewrite it, and let's do it. And I think it was a relationship that worked really well, because I think Tug of War was McCartney's best album in 10 years, And I think Springsteen needs somebody that whose opinion he respects, who he'll listen to, and he'll just get in and say, well, look, it's like Landau saying in the Marsh book, come on, it's just a record,
Yeah, he did that with Born to Run.
Yeah,
right.
Chuck Berry can sit around thinking, and at the end of the day, as I say, I'd rather have. I just wish he just, get a live. They should have put a live album. I think what they did after last. They'll ask Gary Newman, so when Gary Newman retired for about the 8th time, they put, there was like a limited edition live album, or live albums came out, right, available for 3 weeks and then deleted. And they should have done that with the UK shows.
Guaranteed, yes.
Yeah, because I mean there was talk they were going to do an EP of...
Wembley shows, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was going to be Trapped and Johnny Bye Bye and Cause the Night and Fire and one other thing, which they should have fucking done, you know, just get it so you can get rid of all those dusty old bootlegs and scratchy tapes and, you know, get some really decent quality stuff. I know that you were there, you know.
I'm sure CBS would put the pressure on him more than once to do that.
Yeah. Of course, there's the thing about CBS contract might be up as well. It's another, that might affect it. I mean, I presume if he leaves CBS, he will take all the tapes with him. You know, I don't think he'd have left it with CBS.
Well, he struggled hard enough to get his publishing rights from Like a Bell.
Yeah.
So, like you say, I'm sure he'd take everything with him.
Yeah, I think so. No, it's very. I mean, the danger in sort of doing a book is that, you know, you live and breathe a particular artist for, like, you know, however long it takes. Like,
it's like
6 months to
I guess
a
a
year.
bit like acting a part on stage.
Yeah,
you know.
and you just you lose objectivity, and I mean you become completely immersed by that person. And I think at the end of the day, it can stop your enjoyment of his. I mean, like, you know, I never play any Springsteen music for pleasure now. I haven't done for ages, you know, because I just sort of, you know, I've just had it, and, you know, but. I know that, yeah. I mean, once the book's out, once I finally got it out of the way, you know, I can go back.
Enjoy it
to
again.
Yeah, but it's funny, really. You know, it's just, you know.
It's interesting. It's like I felt at school, maybe Bruce felt the same. You know, they sort of teach you about all these books and writers and things.
Yeah.
And if somebody tries to break it down and analyse it, works too hard in it.
Yeah.
It loses.
Yeah, I think it does.
What
I
it's
think
meant.
yeah. I mean, this is what I was saying earlier on about, you know, intellectualising about rock and roll, which, I mean, you know, is never meant to be.
The Rolling Stone attitude, I feel very.
I mean, I think there's a place for it. I mean, I think there are certain figures who deserve, you know, analysis. No, I don't think anybody deserves analysis, but I think that, you know, there are certain figures whose work stands up to close analysis. And I think, you know, it's interesting because you get somebody's point of view who's sort of versed in the subject, who's got an appreciation of perhaps wider things. And I mean, all he's just saying is, look, you know, I think this was influenced by this, or I think, you know, he wrote this because of this, and, you know, blah blah. I mean, it's just a sort of a contentious point. You know, you're not saying this is the gospel, because I mean, only he knows. And I mean, even he's probably forgotten, or, you know.
That's right. People will interpret anything in different ways. Like you say, there's bound to be a lot of meanings which aren't even conceived of when the thing was.
You start believing. I mean, you know, you see Lennon going through all his songs before he died, and you say, oh, it's just a junk song. You know, I mean, I think I was in Kenwood, and you know, but, and, you know, and yet that's a song that has sort of influenced people, probably changed people's lives. You know, but to him, it's just like a diary. You know, it's something he did. And I mean, it's like, you know, asking Springsteen now about, I mean, something I really like, Incident on 57th Street. I think it's a great song. But I mean, you know, that's what, 12 years ago. You know, he's not going to remember. Well, he might remember, you know, the circumstances, but, you know, it's a song. You know, it's a diary entry. You know.
That's it. Wrote a new song today.
Yes.
Talking about sort of Landau and approval and so on, have you actually got official backing for the book, or were you involved with the management?
No, as I say, I wrote to Barbara Carr, and she said, unfortunately, Bruce isn't available for an interview at the moment, but
that was as far as it went.
Yeah, wish you good luck with your project. And then the publisher's been clearing songwriting, lyrics.
So in effect, you got permission.
Yeah, it's not authorised or anything. I mean, they're aware
it's not like
of it.
The official.
Oh no.
Or anything.
No, I mean, for that you have to get the. I mean, ideally, you know.
Yes.
You'll read it and say it's all a load of crap, but, you know, I'll sit down in front of a tape recorder for a week and tell you how it really was. You know, then then you're talking. But
sure.
no, I mean, I think what you've got. I mean, you know, I sincerely do believe, folks, that it's a very, very good book. I mean, not just because of my thing, but because that really is just an opinion. But I think it's a balanced opinion. I mean, obviously people will disagree with it, but I hope that more people agree with it and disagree with it. But I think with Chris's stuff, I mean, you've got a gold mine of, you know.
That in itself is
yeah,
worth a book, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm really glad that's being made available to the public.
I mean, you know, the temptation to put that out means that it would only appeal to like the real hardcore fans.
That's
you know,
true. It would really limit it.
It really would, because I mean, you know, bless him. I mean, I don't think that many people are interested that on such and such a night he changed, you know, the Detroit medley to include, you know, that I Got a Train thing. You know, I mean, it is interesting if you're interested in Springsteen, but for the new fans, we're hoping to sort of all read the book. You know, you know, I think there will be something for everyone. You know, I mean, I know I'd buy it. You know, just to sort of get it out. There's a lot of gold and stuff. You know.
And yet, at the same time, you said the sort of obsessive nature of it, or the obsessive degree to which it can go, you know, puts you off or turns you off. But
well, it can do, because I mean, it's like if you're just working. Well, I suppose like he feels with albums. I mean, no, I'm not comparing myself, but I mean, I can sort of see why it is difficult to release stuff, because I mean, you get so immersed in the subject, and you lose all objectivity. That it's very, very difficult to, you know, I mean, you have to have a long delay. I find that, as I say, I mean, to sit down just to play the records, you know, just on that level. But I mean, to stand back and look at it, I mean, like every book I've had published, I mean, the first thing you see are the mistakes, you know, and you think, oh God, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have made that point earlier, or I should have tied that up, or there's a link there that I missed, you know, and all you see are the mistakes. And I mean, you know, I've been working on this on and off, I suppose, for 2 years now, which in Springsteen terms, you know, in fan terms, isn't really that long, you know. But I mean, it's pretty well every day, you know, there's something you sort of think, oh yeah, no, that's interesting. Or I was around at a friend's house over Christmas and I saw a book, and I couldn't remember. I knew it was a very important book about the Depression in the States that I wanted to quote. And I found that, oh great, you know, so I made note of that, went down to the library and sort of found that, you know. And there's always something sort of bubbling away. So, you know, when it's finally finished, you know, you can step back, get on with other things, and then maybe months or a year's time come back, play the music purely for enjoyment, you know, and just enjoy it all over again. I mean, that's a great thing, you know. I mean, certainly if he comes live again, I mean, you just know there's going to be that charge you get out of seeing him.
It's probably just as well that you were doing it continuously and at the same time intermittently with other things, otherwise it could have been too intense.
Oh yeah, I mean, if he was sort of wanking out stuff, it would have been very, very difficult to get any degree of flow to it, you know, whereas at least this way,
You've got time to breathe.
Yeah, you've got an overview on the whole thing.
Dave Marsh said something once about he felt that there would never be another tour the same as the last one,
no.
in terms of impact and extent and everything.
No, I don't think there will. I mean, I think it was not a magic moment. You know, I think for all the reasons I sort of said, you know, that I mean, the sort of parlour state that music was in, the fact that he hadn't been over in what? I mean, 8 years, was it? No, 6 years. I mean, you know, the fact that like only in the UK, only something like 6,000 people had ever seen him live in the UK, and the rumours were coming about, you know, these legendary shows and everything. So I mean, there was, yeah, I think he's right. I mean, I think there was just that, you know, like the first, you know, when he actually, it's like the first time I ever saw Dylan was the '78 tour, which was like a really good one. And when he came out, so I've been following that guy for like all of my adult life. And the first time I saw him, you know, my first reaction was, my God, he actually exists. You know, there is a Bob Dylan. You know, because all you've done is like listen to records and seen pictures and everything.
Wait for a show.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I you know, seriously sort of thought, you know. I don't know, like, you know, he died in a bike crash in the 60s. You know, I mean, you just sort of, you know, to actually see him, you know, the living, breathing person. And so the same with I mean, you know, the first time I saw Springsteen in New York, you know, you thought, you know, crying. I mean, it was literally some pinches, you know, he's actually here. I'm sitting here in New York listening to Bruce Springsteen playing Born to Run, you know. And
dreams come true, would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just, you know, it's just there and it's happening. It is a one-off thing. And I mean, every subsequent show was great. But I mean, I think everybody says, you know, the first time you see Springsteen, I mean, it is a landmark, you know. I mean,
yes,
nothing will sort of replace that.
I don't actually remember a lot of the details about Frankfurt, my first show, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, he's so overwhelmed by the sort of,
exactly.
You know, he's actually...
Partly because I wasn't expecting it to happen the way it did, you know. And it was very sudden, you know, because of the cancellation.
Yeah.
sort of not so much like a anticlimax, a sort of pre-climax.
That's right.
somehow,
Yeah. Oh, it's a tremendous.
I wasn't ready for it.
It's
Even
a
though
tremendous thing. I mean, this is, and so I think yes, I think Marsh is right. I mean, I don't think that, and I think also, I mean, the guy is going to be what 36 this year.
oh no, not that much. 34 or something.
34. I mean,
34,
35. You know, mid-30s. I mean, that's, you know,
He's getting on.
he's getting on, and you know, the energy he puts into those shows.
You can't keep it up forever. Well,
and his attitudes change. I mean, you know, his view on life and what he wants to do. You know, I mean, that changes as you grow older. And it changes with anyone.
Can you imagine him getting into anything else?
Well, I would think movies. I mean, would seem the obvious step. I don't think he's got the discipline to write sustained prose. I couldn't see him sitting down and writing a Black American novel. I think that's a very disciplined, very solitary thing. I don't think
It wouldn't give him the feel that he gets from being on stage anyway.
Oh no. And there's no immediacy to it. I mean, that's incredibly delayed process.
There's no contact with the audience.
No. I mean, film must be an attraction. I think, you know, as I say, it's reflected in some of his writing. You know,
It's obviously an interest, yeah. And
and I think the reviews for No Nukes, and you know, people comparing to John Garfield and everything. But I mean, that's like the predictable sort of rock and roll route, isn't it? You know, if you're a big star, then you go into movies, and you know, if you're lucky, if you're Sting or Bowie, you know, you make a career of it. And if you're sort of, you know, Adam Faith or I don't know, most people don't fairly well if they can stick it in.
There have been plenty of rumours that Bruce was offered and taken various parts, such as sort of Brando type parts, you can imagine, you know, predictable roles.
Well, I mean, Waits is. I mean, I suppose I suppose feasibly, he could do a soundtrack and then slip into it the way Waits has done it.
Have you heard Somewhere on Signal Hill?
No.
The B-side of Clarence Clemens' new single.
Oh no.
Oh, I'll play it to you, but that strikes me as very much a soundtrack sort of song. You can imagine him extending that. And like we said already, you know, he can adapt to almost any form.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean, again, the problem I imagine would be that, you know, him working to somebody else's script. You know, I think he'd want, you know, sort of fairly lower saying. I mean, like with Waits and Monk from the Heart. I mean, that the soundtrack was an integral part of. I mean, that actually was part of the script. You know, it moved the narrative along.
And he was actually in the film.
He was actually in the film, and that was like the foot in the door that led him on to other Coppola parts, and I think, you know, probably quite a good little career as a sort of as an actor.
It's interesting because people have said seeing, you know, Nuke's movie, that Bruce is sort of like a natural for the camera, an instinct he's got.
Yeah.
You know.
So I think very much so. I mean, no.
But like we say, off stage, he's quite a different, more low-key person.
Really. Oh sure, yeah. But
you wonder. Well, you never know. He's done this car wash scene for Clarence.
That's right. That's right.
Could be the start of something big.
Small things.
MTV, you know.
Yes.
And yet he hasn't done well, I don't really count the Atlantic City video. It's
No.
so-called official CBS video.
Oh, it was just, he wasn't even in it, was he?
Apparently it was done while he was off on the West Coast somewhere.
Yeah.
They just put it out.
I was surprised.
He's actually avoided TV.
He has. It's annoying actually, because I mean, like with the video boom at the moment, you know, obviously a Springsteen video would be a wonderful thing.
And naturally the bootlegs come in there.
Yeah, well,
because of demand.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you actually get to see a film of a show, and it brings back you know, all the sort of, you know, the happy memories of actually seeing live.
Next best thing certainly to
very much
to a
so.
show.
But I mean, I imagine that there'd be the same sort of problem with approval for I mean, there, you
it
know,
would be worse than a live album.
Yeah.
Certainly another dimension for him to, you know, procrastinate about.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so probably won't ever see that.
Because you can remix a live album, but you can't really sort of change a show as it's
No,
seen. You
no.
can't redo a show.
And also, I mean, you need a 4-hour video.
That's true. Like Steve said, you know, you get the Reader's Digest chipping in.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's about it. All I can think of. Just to say, you mentioned you're doing various other sort of promotional things, interviews and.
Yeah, I haven't really started. I mean, it's near the time. I hope we're going to get some. I mean,
I suppose it will depend on whether there's any tour or whatever.
Well, yes, I think obviously, I mean that is going to help tremendously, because I mean the thing is, if there's something happens, I mean the media latch on to sort of immediate experts, you know, and if you happen to have, you know, a book out,
Especially if it's new, yeah.
Yeah, I mean then, you know, you automatically know everything about that person. I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, I've got, as I say, I'm seeing the publishers next week. We're going to talk about promotion and who, you know, who to send review copies to and everything. So I mean, I'm going to mention you and you know, all the sort of people who I think have helped. You know, I mean, I'm going to try, and I spoke to Roger Scott last year and mentioned I was doing it, and he said, "Oh, great, when it's finished, come on the show." You know, which would be good, because I mean, he's a fan. I mean, I think, you know, it'd be quite good to get on there for half an hour and just give him an opportunity to play some Springsteen stuff. You know, she's
That's an ideal outlet.
well, yeah, and like Radio London, and I've done Round Midnight, Ryan Matthews thing. He's on Radio 2. He's really good. I mean, he just knows about everything. You know, so I think I'd like to do stuff like that and promote it. And I think Chris is going to try and do some stuff in the Midlands, you know, radio and local papers and everything, and then see what the publishers can come up with in the way of publicity.
Obviously, as you say, if there is a tour, it'll make sense to go for the, you know, the various sort of cities and venues and so on.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, ideally,
that would happen eventually anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing sort of radio, you know, Ipswich or something. I mean, you know, or if he plays Birmingham, you know, to do BRMB. I mean, I doubt whether he'd do it, but I mean, so you know, you sort of get the next best thing. You know.
If you know, because the book is very much a, like you say, not only British but a European angled book, would it be worth going going to Europe? Read it there? Would you do that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I mean, yeah. I mean, if the publishers pay
America?
fair, yeah. Well, actually, just saying, it'd be interesting to see what the reaction would be in America. I mean, if they're negotiating a separate deal for an American print. Apparently, there's been quite a lot of interest in it, because people say, well, it's been like 5 years since the Marsh thing, you know, and they reckon that there is a market for another one. And it'd be interesting to see how, if and when it's published in America, what the reaction would be to English people doing a book about such an American star.
Yes, I get the impression the Americans sort of feel, you know, I don't blame them, but you know, that Springsteen is very much their possession in a way, because he is so American. Yeah. And they're often surprised that there's such an interest.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, on the other, you know, then the other side of the coin is that somebody like Dave Marsh doing a book about such an archetypally English band, you know.
Of course.
And I think, I mean, I noticed, I mean, I reviewed it for music, and the things that I noticed were like errors, like, I mean, it was sort of stupid things like, he said that, he said that something like Russ Conway was a blind pianist, that the M1 led to Brighton, he got the name of some Mike Sarn hit, you know, and it's just sort of things that, like, as an English pop fan, you know wrong, and I'm sure when it's published in the States, you know, it's going to be like really glaring sort of things that Americans would know, you know.
Well, with Chris, you're doing your best to avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm using the teach them. You know.
Like you say, he knows probably more than Bruce.
I think he does. I really do. I mean, he's just got this, you know, phenomenal sort of. You know, but he's great because I mean, he's into Squeeze and Costello and you know, all sorts of Graham Parker and all sorts.
He's got a wonderful collection, man.
Yeah, you know, he's a Nick Drake fan. He's, you know, it's really good. You know, and he's not. I mean, obviously he's sort of.
Bruce is the big one.
Yeah, but he's aware of other things.
He's not blinkered, no.
No, she's like really good.
Yes. It would be interesting to see what Bruce himself thinks of the book.
Yeah,
he talked about his attitude to such things.
Yeah, I mean, I will send, I don't know, a couple of copies to like Landau's office and, you know, keep fingers crossed. I mean,
because I heard about him seeing the German edition of Born to Run recently, and how he sort of flicking through the photos, you know, brought a lot back for him. So maybe it will have the same effect.
Well, I mean, ideally, you know, if he gets to see it, I mean, you know,
this is it.
Wants to talk about it, you know, and, I'll be there with my tape recorder.
I would too. In my case, I must admit. Give me the word, I'll be on.
Yeah.
Anyway, what can I say? Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks
yes.
for coming to
no,
talk.
well, thank you. It's pretty. I mean, thanks for all all your support, and I'm sure Chris will.
It's a pleasure.
It's really good.
It's
There's somebody out there.
Well, yes, I've got several orders already.
Really good. Yeah, well, I'm sure they'll either be advertising or I don't know. I mean, I hope that you could get like half a dozen copies for competition or something. I mean,
I'd love to if that's possible.
Yeah. Oh, what sort of readership do you have? I mean, do you know roughly?
I haven't got a sort of anywhere near an exact figure, but the thing is, I haven't actually got a subscription system. I just sort of send each one out as it comes, because I never know whether I'm going to do another issue and when. You know, I mean, like subscribing to Bruce albums for the next 4. You know,
that's right. Yeah.
You can't do it. But I reckon I've sold a good few thousand in the last sort of 3 years or so.
That's great.
You know, it's obviously a lot during the tour.
Yeah.
In fact, it was because I had the magazine that I was able to follow the tour as I did, being unemployed at the time. And I've sold a few thousand, as I say, over the years, more or less all over the world.
Right.
It was great because I never expected it to be more than a one-off.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, very satisfying.
What made you start it? Was it just sort of...
Well, I discovered Bruce about late 78 or sort of early 79, I forget. And like anybody else at the time who was in it, I was, longing for a tour, waiting for a show. And I guess it was partly something to fill the time, fill the gap. I was unemployed at the time, and I heard about Candy's Room, which was the first British fanzine. I read about that ages before it came out. Got fed up waiting for that to come out. So I thought, well, if anybody's interested in helping me, I'll try something myself. And it just took off.
Did you advertise in the music press, or just...
Mainly in NME. Originally I put ads in all the major papers and wherever else I was offered an ad. But I found NME was the one that stuck, the one that got the results. And anything else, I've just taken what's come my way. I haven't actually sort of gone out actively seeking any outlets. There's a store in Greenwich Village sells a few copies, but that's quite by coincidence. So. Yes. I don't know how long I'll be doing it, but it's, like they say, as long as it's fun.
Yeah, right.
That's amazing.
Good. Right.
I think that's about it. I was going to say, would you like a drink round the corner, or?
Is there a pub nearby?
There's one just round the back below, so it's quite nice. It's got a log fire. If you
Might
like.
be done. Yeah. I could have Chiswick. There's no burning rush.
Okay, let's stop there.
Great.
Interview with Patrick Humphries by Dan French in London.